A few weeks ago, the dumbest chess bot, Martin, got a futuristic update and is now one of the strongest bots on chess.com. Can Magnus Carlsen beat him? Martin had the white pieces and orchestrated a brilliant attack against the world champ. The game began with e4, c5, the Sicilian defense. I made the two bots play this opening as it promises an exciting game. Knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3 and a6. This is the Najdorf variation of the Sicilian. Bishop e3, e6, f3, b5, queen d2, knight b d7, and then g4. I preset all the moves up until this point to make sure the engines have a combative game. Please like and subscribe, and make sure you don't miss out on game 2 where Magnus will have the white pieces in this position. The bots were now on their own, and the game continued with h6, preventing g5, long castles, bishop b7, and king b1. It is always useful to have your king on b1 in Sicilians. You will see why later in the game. Bishop e7 and h4. Martin wants to attack on the king side, and black will launch a counterattack on the queen side. d4. The best response to an attack on the flank is by striking in the center. Martin takes with the pawn and Magnus recaptures with the knight. Knight takes d5, bishop takes d5, and we get our first brilliant move of the game. You can pause the video to try and find the move that Martin played in this position. In this position, Martin played knight f5, jumping the knight into the position and threatening a lot of black's pieces. Magnus cannot take the knight as Martin would then take the hanging d5 bishop. The game continued with castles and bishop g2, leaving the knight to hang because it cannot be taken. Knight e5 and then queen c3. Magnus still can take the knight due to the now hanging e5 knight. Bishop d6, knight takes d6 and queen takes d6. Martin now continues the attack with the move f4, hitting the knight with tempo and expanding on the king side. Magnus plays knight c4 and Martin continues the attack with g5. Black cannot take the g2 bishop as it is pinned. Knight takes e3, queen takes e3, and rook a c8. Black begins his counterplay on the c-file. G takes h6, opening up the black king, and then Magnus plays queen c6, and here we see the importance of the king being on b1. Many moves ago, Martin played king b1. If he hadn't, then white would be lost due to the checkmate threat on c1 and the hanging g2 bishop. But because Martin played king b1, he can take on d5 as queen takes c1 is not a checkmate. E takes d5, and then h takes g7. Both kings are starting to feel a little unsafe. Magnus plays queen takes c2 check, king a1, and then rook e8, putting the rook on the open file and attacking the white queen. Martin moves his queen to f3, and Magnus plays d4, advancing his passed pawn. You cannot take this pawn due to queen c1 and a back-rank checkmate. h5. Martin continues his attack, and so does Magnus with rook e2 hitting the b2 pawn. Rook b1 defending, and the queen e4 threatening a queen trade. If Martin trades queens, he loses a sizable amount of his advantage, and there he plays queen h3. Magnus continues offering queen trades with queen e6, queen d3, queen e3, queen f5, queen e6, queen g5, and Magnus has run out of queen trade options, so he moves his king to h7. f5 attacking the queen, queen e3 threatening another queen trade, and queen f6 declining. Queen e5 and queen takes a6. Martin grabs a few pawns before trading the queens. Queen takes f5 and h6. Martin now has two very dangerous connected passed pawns which also take away a lot of escape squares from the black king. Rook g8 trying to blockade the pawns, and then Martin centralizes his queen with queen d6 attacking the d4 pawn. Queen e6, and then Martin played the lovely queen f8, essentially trapping the black rook and threatening many nasty ideas around the black king. Black cannot of course take this queen as white can make another, or can even promote to a knight with a fork. f5, rook d1 improving the rook and attacking the pawn. Queen d5, and then rook f1 attacking the f5 pawn. Martin's queen is still hanging and can still not be taken. Rook e5, rook g1, and then rook e8. And now you can pause the video to find the brilliant move that Martin found in this position. In this position, Martin played the brilliant rook takes d4 with a counterattack on Magnus queen. Black cannot take this rook due to queen takes f5, and so we get rook takes f8 and rook takes d5. The queens are finally gone, but Martin sits comfortably up 2 pawns. Rook f6, rook takes b5 creating 2 passed pawns. King takes h6, rook b3, king h7, rook h3, rook h6 and rook takes h6. If you want to win a rook endgame, trading one pair of rooks is usually the way to go as it eliminates counterplay from your opponent, whilst still keeping enough material on the board. King takes h6 and b4. Martin now gets the passed pawns rolling. f4, king b2, f3, rook f1. Rook takes g7 and rook takes f3. King h5, b5, king g4, rook b3, putting the rook behind the pawns. King f5, a4, king e5, b6, rook g2 check, king a3, rook g8 and b7. Rook b8 and Martin pushes the pawn to a5 where it will advance up the board and help its other friend. King d4, a6, rook f8, a7, rook f1, b8 queen, rook a1, king b4, king d5 and Martin promotes and now has 2 queens, rook takes a8, queen takes a8 check. Magnus now plays king e6, queen f8, king d7, rook d3, king e6, king c5, king e5 and then rook e3 with a beautiful checkmate. I hope you enjoyed the video and stay tuned for game 2. Here Magnus will have the white pieces in this Sicilian. Please like, subscribe, and then go promote some pawns.